What the fuck? Mark addressed himself quietly in a stunned whisper. Leaping out of bed, 3:17 glared back at him on his clock as he was awoken by the banging at his front door. Someone's hand grasping the handle and yelling, pleading to be let in. He immediately called the police, as he is at home alone and did not anticipate anyone coming to his house during this time of day. 911, where is your emergency? The operator was tired but prepared to assist. Nonetheless, Mark continued and told her about the noises at his door, and she dispatched an officer to his residence and instructed Mark to stay on the phone until they arrived. The noises continued for a while, then abruptly ceased, leaving Mark in pure silence and stillness. Hello? You there? The operator cut in and informed Mark that the officers were at his front door. Mark slowly stood up and walked to his front door and greeted the two officers. Then they waited briefly and looked around. The officers concluded that something or an animal likely crawled up onto his porch and was messing with his door. After the officers left, Mark entered, locked the door, and bluntly went back to bed. This went on for a number of days. Every evening Mark was woken and heard his doorknob being messed with. Sometimes he was able to make out whispering, breathing, and even on occasion a growled grunt. He one night became brave. He promised himself he would not sleep and try to catch whatever or whomever was teasing him. Mark just thought he would sit on his couch and relax before he would have his encounter with a monster terrorizing him. It was somewhere close to 1:30 when he lay on the couch fast asleep, when he, despite trying as hard as he could, slept. His clock in his living room indicated 3:17 when suddenly he was woke up by pounding at his front door. Something new compared to before. It was scratching before, making rattling noises on the knob, but this time whatever was at his door needed to come in urgently. That was when he heard it. Please. Let me in. He's almost here. The voice boomed at Mark and the chills ran down his spine. They had known he was there, but the voice had not been the same, he knew. But it could not be. He moved slowly towards the peephole, quiet and silent, not wanting to make a sound. When he peered through the peephole, his fear was multiplied, for his mind had been confirmed. Before him, behind the door, clad in his finest torn clothes, bruised and clearly exhausted, stood he. But he was not he. He was darker, more menacing, less here where he wasn't, as if he didn't belong here. Abruptly convulsive, gripped Mark and pulled him back from the door in shock. He was scared, and he tripped over one shoe and struck the back of his head off a little table in his foyer, falling straight out cold. Mark came awake in bed, panting. His eyes darted frantically about, seeing in the darkness. He was in bed. The clock read exactly 3:17. As he gradually came to and started getting himself organized again, he was just coming online. He was in his bedroom, but not in my bedroom. Things weren't quite where he had left them. His window wasn't quite in the middle of his wall. When Mark climbed out of bed and took a look, he looked out his window and at his neighborhood, but as his bedroom it was up. There were no streetlights, there were no leaves on the trees, and it was darker. Just as he was going to dismiss it as a dream, he looked up and saw across the street, his house, his actual house. The downstairs lights were on. Mark sprinted out his front door and across the street to his actual house. Scared, he began pounding on the door, yelling, pleading to be let in. And then, after a lifetime, he looked out his window and that's when he saw it. He saw him, unconscious in the hallway. The wall clock said 3:17. What the fuck?